Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Executive Committee meeting of Thursday, January 5th. I'd like to call the meeting to order and do a roll call.
Certainly, starting with Bruce Goins.
Here.
Catherine Hilliard. Rachel Kurtz.
Here.
Julie McMillan.
Here.
President Rodoni.
Here, thank you. Third item on the agenda is any agenda adjustments today? No. Welcome, Ann. I don't think I said welcome to you too. So nice to see you. Glad you could make it. The fourth item is open time on the agenda for public expression. The public is welcome to address the executive committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant in the government code section, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please remember to silence your phones and mute your microphone when not reporting out. Any public comments this morning, Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on items not currently on the agenda, please raise your hand in the reactions. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, we do not have any hands for public comment.
Thank you. I did notice we have about 10 attendees in the public, so thank you all for attending. Item 5 is Executive Officer's Report. Mark Brown.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all dry and safe as we go through these storms. As you've probably seen, as well as I did, that this is our second atmospheric river in less than a week, and they're predicting another one Saturday, another one Monday. Monday's being so far predicted to be worse than the one that we have right now. And in the long-term predictions are for 2 to 3 weeks of this type of weather pattern. So we shall see. So speaking of our weather, one of the things that's been on our minds, especially Ann's mind, is erosion control with the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. And we have really taken a proactive approach to avoid any erosion problems. And when I say we, it really is Ann and her team taking care of that. We aren't doing any work during the rain as far as vegetation removal, but we did have a soils expert take a look at project areas before the rain occurred. And then at some select areas after the historic rain predictions, we had the soils expert go out and take another look. And so here's a picture of installing some additional wattles to help make sure that we don't have any slippage down into the private property that's down below that hillside. And then with the last storm, we did have a small issue with the storm drain on Los Angeles Boulevard, just outside of San Anselmo. It was a culvert that went through both county and private property. One person in the area thought it might have been related to our work. The fire department that responded out there said, you know, this culvert has problems quite frequently. And we sent a couple people out. We really didn't think it was related to our work. However, we wanted to be proactive and make sure that we have happy residents out there. And the property owner that the culvert is on, we asked for permission and we went in and helped clean out the culvert and made sure, again, that none of our material that we had cut is what's causing the culvert problem. That resident didn't think it was from our work, but was very appreciative that we actually took that proactive approach. And we continue to monitor our work and make sure that we aren't having any erosion problems. And so far we haven't. We're entering into a new partnership that we hadn't had before. It's with a partner that we've worked with before, but it's a kind of a new spin on it. Conservation Corps of North Bay, who we're partnering with between Marin County Fire and for the Fire Foundry. They're doing a lot of the ownership of the crews and such. And they had an opportunity for what's called a Forestry Corps grant. And they are the ones that are applying for this grant. They applied for this grant in partnership with us and the Novato Shaded Fuel Break. And they were awarded the grant. So they're going to receive $375,000 to perform some of the work for the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break. And before I go on to my next item, I want to give Ann an opportunity to add on to anything I may have said about the erosion control.
Great, thanks so much, Mark. Regarding the culvert work, I just want to clarify a couple of things. We did contact the County Department of Public Works, and it was not within their jurisdiction. It was the culvert was all within private property. The local residents actually went in after the water receded to clear the culvert. We didn't do that work, but we did go in with a very small crew after the fact to make sure there wasn't any other material nearby that could get delivered to the stream or the culvert that could cause further flooding issues. So we weren't working within the culvert itself, but we were working to prevent material from going in. Largely, it was material from years of no management in the area, not from the project, but we wanted to build trust and do what we could to help the residents. So we did go in and do additional work. And we are employing subcontractors with our environmental consultants to look at all the steep hillsides within the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break as part of kind of project planning each year to evaluate those slides or those potential, erosion areas or unstable hillsides to make sure we're avoiding any potential issues and planning well ahead to avoid any issues in the future. But everything is looking good right now.
Thanks for the clarification. Moving on to another update on the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. We will be transmitting the data for 4 homes. We have the resident permission. It's a little bit behind schedule, mainly because the transmission or the translation of our data into a way that IBHS can receive it took longer than we thought, but that's why you beta test it. Now that we have that system in place, we shouldn't have the delays any longer. It is 4 homes, and so we'll see how that goes. The Office of Planning and Research, who is funding the biomass study that Bruce has been a part of, representing the MWPA and ESP, that whole partnership. Since OPR knew about our work, they wanted to reach out to us and align or use us as a beta test for a defensible space app that they're trying to create. It's a partnership between OPR, Cal Poly San Luis, and Amazon. And we had a little over an hour-long meeting with them. They shared what their product is, and we shared what our product is. And they said, well, in no way are we trying to replace what you guys are doing. Their tool is more related to people who don't have the type of services we have. However, they've got some items within their tool that we think would be really beneficial for us. And their tool is using artificial intelligence wholly. It's not really using any ground-based inspection. So our data is a lot more accurate. But what they are doing is they're estimating how much material is being recommended to be removed. So we're actually starting to get that they are able to create a biomass estimate by that parcel. So we think that's really interesting for us. And they also want to create a connection between the report and people to be able to remove that biomass material and perhaps do it in mass rather than individuals. And so that's why they're also really interested in our Tripper Day program and how we're doing that in mass. So we're going to get that same group that we had that meeting with and get them together with our DSpace experts and see how we can partner in the future. Super excited about the knowledge and attitude survey, and that's where we've been working with community-based organizations to help inform what the questions are that we're actually going to ask our community and how we're going to ask the community. I wanted to list the community-based organizations that we're meeting with, but it actually takes a full page of typing. So that's how many agencies that we've reached out to. The participation level has been high. And what I'm excited about is that we have our first community interaction coming next week at Good Earth in Mill Valley. Josh Damone, Charlotte Jourdain, Josh Hampshire, Andre Salinas, and Elena Benching will be out there meeting with the public and discussing with them, asking the questions that we plan on asking, because we don't want to just rely on one form of information gathering on this. We really want to diversify how we gather this information. So pretty excited that we've done this, or we've made this step. Prior to the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break being initiated, a resident in Oak Manor who has a career with the U.S. Forest Service that started in 1977, and he just happens to be a vegetation management specialist. And I looked him up on the internet, and his resume is quite impressive. He knows what he's talking about, and he contacted us going, "So, what are you going to do about this stuff behind my house? I hear you guys talking about the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break." And I'm going, "Well, you know what? Let me look at your parcel. And yeah, we are going to be hitting your house. In fact, you're one of the high priority areas." And so sure enough, after we did our work, he sent us an awesome email saying how great the work was. And it was nice to hear where we connected with a resident before the work happened. The resident called back and said, "This is awesome." And it's a person that has the resume to say that that's a valuable opinion for us. And then finally, a couple IJ stories I wanted to discuss. There was the story about the evacuation study that UC Berkeley is doing / video game. I wish the IJ would have called us before they published the article, because I could have expressed the connection of UC Berkeley's work with our evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. It is separate, but together. And I'll explain why. The Bellina study happened before the MWPA ever formed. And then after the MWPA formed, we connected with UC Berkeley and started the idea of 5 pilot areas for them to expand in Marin. We wrote a letter of support for them to get the grant to do the work in Marin and Alameda. They got the grant, and then we issued our evac ingress egress risk assessment RFP, and UC Berkeley ended up being one of the teams that's part of that study. And so all the information from that work will help inform our study, and vice versa. The work that we're doing is helping to inform their work. So while it is separate, it's also very connected. And I think it's a really great partnership that we're able to get data from them that on a $2+ million grant that they got to help our work. And then our work is going to help them. And then the CAL FIRE wildfire severity maps. IJ did contact me on that one, but basically I said everything exactly the same way as Jason did. So they stuck with the county fire chief, which makes sense. But in a nutshell, you could see the before map top left and the after map bottom right. And we have a little over 100,000 acres of high severity. And you can see that is a 33% increase of what we had before. And most of that increase is in Northwest Marin. As you can see, a lot of the rangelands have been reclassified from moderate fire danger to high fire danger. And then when you see in the watershed where only like a third of it was classified as very high, now just about all of the Mount Tamalpais watershed is classified as very high. What does this mean for us? I'll be really, really blunt. We had started quite a few years ago ignoring the 2007 maps because we knew that they were just simply out of date. We were making decisions based on more recent data, such as the LiDAR scans that we had in 2019, the CWPP data, the forest health strategy that One Tam has been working on. We had much more accurate and current data. Now these maps, though, they really match what our firefighters' eyes are telling us, but also matching what the other data that we had been following. So it is encouraging that these maps are now much more accurate. And County Fire will be working with Marin Map to update these layers in Marin Map, because the old layers, this map is currently in Marin Map. We're working with them to get this map in the Marin Map. And then we'll post a news story on the MWPA website that links directly to the interactive map that CAL FIRE has. It's a pretty cool map. They have a little slider, like one of our veg management maps or pictures that we've had, where you could slide the thing across and it shows you the before and after. And with that, I'll stop screen sharing and apologize for the length. I thought this was going to be a short report, but things just kept popping up that I thought I needed to share with you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Questions for Mark? Yeah, Rachel, please.
First question, thanks, Mark, for the update. Happy New Year. The knowledge and attitude survey, is that the outward name? Is that the communication name to it? Are we calling it something else?
No, that's what we're calling it.
Okay. Um, and is there, as people are being asked to take it, are we then using that as an opportunity for them to go get additional information or follow up with anything? You know, because if we're talking to people, it's an opportunity, I think, for us to either push something out to them or ask them for us of us.
So it's right now, it's driven towards what our baseline is. What is the current knowledge of wildfire prevention, and what is the attitude, the general attitude? And we're breaking that up into community groups, socioeconomic groups, going through all the range of diversity, so we could highlight where we've been successful with our message and not so successful with our message. And then we are still in the design phase for this. The Good Earth visit is our first step out into that community outreach. And then what this is going to do is going to inform us on how we can improve that knowledge and improve the attitude towards wildland fire mitigation.
Can the board have an opportunity to see it even at this point with the surveys at, and just try to do the data, and then you can wipe our data out?
Yeah, like I said, we're still in the formative stage, and it's the actual questionnaire is not totally refined yet. So we're not at that point yet.
Sure. Whenever it'd be nice just to have so if anyone asks us, we can say, yeah, we've seen it too.
Yep. Thank you.
And then one more follow-up question on the insurance piece, and sort of ties in with the maps. Will the insurance companies be using those new maps, or have they already been using those maps? And does this also change the definition of what we call the, you know, from the WUI perspective?
It doesn't change the definition of WUI. It'll be more, it's yet to be seen, and that is a fear that people have, that the insurance companies will start using this and use that as a reason to increase rates or non-renewals. Where it's going to have an impact, but not so much in Marin because of our WUI ordinances our communities have, is the resale inspections that are driven by AB 38. That if you're in a high or a very high and you are doing a resale, you have to have an inspection. But most of our agencies and communities in Marin already have a WUI ordinance that stipulates that's required. So it's the insurance question that's lingering out there, and I think our proactiveness in our DSpace inspection program and connecting with IBHS could help counter those fears.
Right. And working back up the list, sorry, one more on the erosion piece. I get, I've been trying to say, like, and I'm not sure if this is just a good correlation or not, but the work that we've already been doing has helped us during this storm with wires and clearance and things like that. But I just sort of made that up. Is that, do we know if some of the work that we've done has also helped?
I would say actually it would be more the work that PG&E's been done, and I know they're not typically the popular people, but this is actually a spot where their work has helped. We don't do a lot of work around power lines. It does actually require a different level of certification for the workers to work near power lines.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
But it helps with erosion. So the debris, some of the dead and down that we're removing off the hillsides is stuff that could be getting down into creeks and clogging creeks.
Okay, I'm not too far off. All right, good.
Julie, did you have a question?
Rachel asked it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Bruce?
Bruce's hand is hidden by his shade.
Yeah. Really great report. And I want to really thank Ann and team. To be taking on the erosion control question is so smart and so timely and so incumbent upon us. But that picture of putting down straw wattle is, I'm assuming that was some of our work. And I understand that we have hired a contractor, and there's been, I'm assuming that there's been a thorough assessment of MWPA work beyond Ross Valley. Is that's question number one.
We are assessing Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break in particular because it's such a large project area, and because we as MWPA are directly involved in implementation, the different member agencies will be tackling their own projects that they're implementing separately.
Okay,
We wanted to get ahead of it and look ahead at potential project areas, slopes that we were considering avoiding, and get experts' recommendations ahead of time about straw wattles and native grass seed, things like that, so that we could plan ahead. And we'll be doing that throughout the whole project area. We'll be doing that ahead of next field season and have our plan in place.
okay, I guess the question then is, how extensive is this assessment? It sounds like it's the Ross Valley, but that's the other, but there are 9 other members or 8 other members not in the Ross Valley project, all who have done work. My question is there a systematic assessment being done?
There's not an MWPA wide assessment being done, but we focused on the areas that were within our direct kind of implementation control and that had mapped slopes that would suggest that they were of particular interest. So we use topography and slope as the defining.
I would just suggest, Anne, as a professional, that maybe you send out a little alert to all the member agencies to let them know the work that you've done, who you've hired, and that you're being proactive in identifying prospective erosion, which doesn't even begin to talk about the potential for mass wasting. So, but I do think that all members should at least be notified, and they will all know individually where their steep slopes are, where their residents below. And anyway, I think it's fantastic what you're doing. And I just think we should make sure that every member is alerted to do so.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we're thinking the same way about notifying, especially members of the ATC who are directly involved in project implementation. I also checked in with folks in the Muir Beach area along Highway 1, where we've been active in helping implement. And Muir Beach and national parks both feel like we're in really good shape. And I offered to send a crew out there with wattles, and they didn't really feel like it was necessary. They felt like we were looking really good, and there's still a lot of vegetation on the ground to hold things steady, and no concerns there.
Okay, then the last question is to the fiscal aspects of this, that this is not something we funded for. I know Mark he can write a $50,000 check. I don't know what his budget is for doing that, but just the fiscal implications, who's going to, little members may not have, smaller members may not have a reserve, that we make sure that we have in place some resources for them to ink those contracts if they need it.
Yeah, and this was written into the scope of Panorama from the very beginning as an assumed cost that would be associated with environmental compliance and project implementation. So I think this was part of the plan really from before I was on board. It's also a requirement within the CalVTP that you assess slopes above a certain percent and make sure to have a qualified professional go out and assess. So we're complying with all of that as well. And that's part of the implementation cost for that project.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Really great stuff. Great report. Wonderful stuff. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Good questions. So now we'll go to the public. Any public comment on the executive officer's report?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the executive officer's report, please go ahead and raise your hand in the reactions. If you're joining us by phone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, we do not have any hands for public comment.
All right, thank you. I'll bring it back to the committee for any further discussion. No action is required. Yes, Julie.
Just a comment on the erosion control, and that's all so impressive what you've talked about and how it was originally scoped in the Panorama work. And I'm just wondering, with all the rain and upcoming rain forecast, if it might be a good opportunity for MWPA to be proactive and get something in the IJ about the whole package of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is the consent calendar. We only have one item on the consent calendar today. So I'm going to look to the public for public comment.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar item, please raise your hand in the reactions. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. And sir, we have no public comments.
All right, thank you. Bringing it back to the committee. Any questions, comments, and or motion for this item?
I'll make a motion to approve consent.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Kirsch, second by McMillan. Roll call, please.
Absolutely. Bruce Goines,
Aye.
Rachel Kurtz,
Aye.
Catherine Hilliard, who is absent, Julie McMillan,
Aye.
President Rodoni.
Aye. Thank you. That passes. And we're going to move to item 7 now, the committee reports, the Citizens Oversight Committee report.
And Pat Randolph, who is in the audience, reached out to me last night and this morning, and they have no report to share today.
Very good. So we'll just move on then to item 8, which is discussion items. 8A is the draft strategic plan and next steps.
And I'm going to start this off, but I'm also going to ask Martina if she can bring Charlotte over as a panelist. That way I can have some backup, if you know what I mean. And we're actually a little bit of ahead of the schedule that I thought we were going to maintain. When we presented the original staff report in November, I was thinking that we would be hitting this phase in March or April, but after Charlotte and I were talking, we realized, you know what? For goals 1, 3, and 5, we're ready to engage now. Goal 1 being vegetation management, 3 is grants, and 5 is DSpace. I may have had 3 and 5 switched, but those are the 3 main categories. We feel that we have the starting point now to be able to engage in getting our measures of success, our impact measures rather than outcomes. Thank you, Bruce. And that's what happens when I write a staff report without Charlotte reviewing it. But anyway, we are pretty excited about this. And Dennis and I, along with Vice President McMillan, were able to connect and create some recommendations of the population or the roster for the ad hoc subcommittee that we would like to meet. And I meant to ask Charlotte, but I think 2 meetings is going to be sufficient for this. If Charlotte, please let me know if I'm on track with that.
No, that sounds right.
Yeah, and so we're looking for representation from all 5 of our geographic zones, as well as large and small. And after today's meeting, with your consent, but it's actually Dennis's ability to appoint, is we are going to reach out to Bruce Goines, Rachel Kurtz, Julie McMillan, Gabe Paulson, Stephen Burke, and Claire Molesworth as the recommended committee. And then we can start going on down that path for that work. And for the presentation, we during and we'll get into this a little bit when we talk about the board of directors agenda. I had our Willow Lab report on our partial level analysis as an information item. It's directly connected to this work. And so we're actually recommending, Charlotte and I are recommending to combine the 2 agenda items into one. And we'll have a short presentation from Charlotte about how we're going to come out with our end product. And then Willow Labs will be able to present on their beta test that they've done in the Kent Woodlands based on our defensible space inspection data. And we're actually ready to roll that out for the rest of the county. We are very excited about what this data can provide for us in many ways. And then when the ad hoc subcommittee gets together, Charlotte will give a much more thorough presentation on how we're going to get to our end goal. And Charlotte, did I miss anything?
No, I think that you got it, Mark.
Okay, so with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions from the committee to Mark? Or
Real quick, Mark, the previous strategic ad hoc, we used the services of Gene Bonender to work in the background and do this, do the meeting design and advance. And I'm assuming Charlotte, incredible. The work that you do is incredible. It'll be your job solely then to work with the strategic ad hoc team.
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, and where we're going to use Gene is Gene's going to support the creation of a strategic plan for MWPA staff on how we support the main strategic plan and our member agencies.
Okay, so the one element that was essential to our first strategic ad hoc effort was, convening just a few people to work with the person that was going to lead the effort, now being Charlotte, just to sit down and talk about what it is we're trying to achieve and the process to get there. Do you anticipate a little advance engagement here as we did previously, or Charlotte, you just want to take this all on your own? I would advise on the former, not the latter.
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking me. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So I will be specifically working to, I've led 6 workshops with the advisory team as far as establishing objectives under each of the goals your board set. So that was done last year. And then now we are at the point where we can move into identifying the exact metrics we will be using to gauge progress towards each of these objectives and goals. So that is the scope of what I'll be taking on through these 2 meetings with the ad hoc subcommittee, specifically identifying the measures that we will track to track our progress towards these goals and objectives. That includes also setting targets for each of these measures so that we can say we want to reach this level, have we reached it or not? Essentially, that's the discussion. The rest of I feel like this is the next step in your strategic plan. The rest of the management of the overall strategic plan, I'll let Mark let me know how he wants to handle that. My focus is specifically on the measures here.
Okay, so I'm going to withdraw what I said previously about the former rather than the latter. I do think this is a fairly well-defined product and process. So thank you, and I'm thrilled to have you leading this group in this effort. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Bruce. Charlotte, do you have anything else you want to? No. Any other questions for Bruce or Charlotte? All right, we'll go to the public then, for public comment.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current item, please raise your hand in the reactions. If you are joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, it does not appear that we have any hands for public.
All right, we'll bring you back to the executive committee for further discussion or any other feedback to staff. No action is needed on this item. All right, go to 8B now, Citizens Oversight Committee Recommendations, Response, and Action Taken. Mark?
Yes, thank you. So as you guys know, the COC was produced their report. We presented it to the executive committee as kind of a team effort between myself and the COC. And the exec committee had a great recommendation of how we can move forward. We divided the recommendation into 3 categories. One category being staff can manage this, or staff has already managed this. One category being that we need to put together a task force between ops and the ATC to work out some of the items. And then another category of policy development that the finance committee would need to engage upon. And there was some overlap between the 2. We set a timeline for the task force between ops and ATC to be completed by October, which it was. And then we had draft policies presented to the finance committee in December, which was on our timeline. And then the board approved those in December. So we feel that we've taken action or have determined the course for every one of the recommendations. And I'll just give a very, very brief outline of the table that was presented in the staff report. Recommendation 1A, in the JPA language, it says that we can borrow up to 10% of our budget. But it's not really defined. What is our budget? Is our budget what we spend, or is our budget what we receive in tax proceeds? So we were able to make a definition for that. That was a recommendation that came straight from Larry Chu. And I find that every time I talk to Larry about finance, I learn at least one thing, if not multiple things. So I really appreciate his input on those types of items. Another one was how to track core projects, or to improve the way we track core projects. We actually already had that in place for this fiscal year, and they're actually pouring through that data now. They recommended that we finalize the policies that we had started And those were the policies that were approved in December by your board. However, once we opened the lid on the insurance policies, we decided we wanted to table that for now, make sure we do adequate research and write that policy properly rather than quickly. Another item was 1D and 1E were the tracking mechanisms, and also making sure that any unspent funds for DSpace and local funds were set aside as restricted funds, and there was a process to ensure that they would be used for local or DSpace projects. We were able to capture that in policies. 2A, 2B regarded funding versus implementation roles between the MWPA member agencies, and also what are acceptable costs, especially for items that kind of have dual purpose. It was both wildland fire, but also all hazards. Evacuation notification is an instance of that. So we were able to capture that in policy language. A concern about our current process just had the member agencies saying that a new project was not supplanting anything else and that we were actually increasing level of service. Their request was to actually have a name attached to that. So in the work plan portal, the person who attests that they are increasing their work rather than supplanting work will actually have a name to it, so we know who we can go to. One of the biggest ones was, or hardest ones to work out, but I think we came up with a really good solution, is specifically they said increase spending in West Marin, but the exec committee pushed back and said, rather than saying just increase spending in West Marin, let's make sure that we're spending our resources at the right place at the right time. So we were able to create a prioritization process through ATC and ops that will still meet our mandate for 80% of our revenue being spent where it was gained, but still have the ability to exert large projects at the right place at the right time. Then another challenge was we all struggled with getting the end of year reports from our member agencies so that the COC could make sure that projects were either in line with what Measure C said we should be doing, and also there is the proper cost accounting. And so this year we made an improvement. However, there's still improvement needed. We were able to get all the data from our member agencies and share it with the COC. However, out of our 17 member agencies, I would hazard a guess it was presented in 13 different styles. And so it's kind of hard to digest that. And so I've been working with both what's called the work plan ad hoc subcommittee at COC and the finance ad hoc subcommittee. And we agree that this was an improvement, but more improvements needed. I've proposed a path forward for next year, and they agree that that is going to satisfy our needs. So we feel that next year we'll have that fixed. And then we were able to get the data from each member agency again, where I think we're going to have to clean it up to make it more uniform on what pre-Measure C efforts were for our member agencies, so that there can be, all right, the agencies were working at this level before Measure C's brought it up to this level, just to show that there was no supplanting. And the last one is they wanted to see more cross-jurisdictional projects. I felt that we already were there, especially with the next year's work plan, but we just perhaps had not done a good job of highlighting those. So we'll continue to highlight our cross-jurisdictional projects. And we currently have this as a staff report in the agenda, but again, we can discuss this at our next agenda item, but staff has recommended that we can actually move this with a slight modification to the staff report to the consent calendar. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thanks, Mark. Julie, go ahead.
I think you meant information section, not consent, Mark.
You're right. I didn't mean, thank you for
I
reading
knew
my mind.
Just a question on all these great recommendations and all the great follow-up that you all have done. Do we have confirmation from the COC that the steps that MWPA has taken satisfy their recommendations?
I've gotten informal discussions following our meetings. I have not had any concerns expressed to me, but I will be giving the same report to the COC at their January meeting.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to have some formal sign off that we've done what they said and they're satisfied.
And that's our goal for the January meeting.
Awesome, thank you.
And that was my question also, Julie, thanks for asking it. And then the question is, where in our procedures is it codified that this process, we have this process to circle back with them, but I think we need a procedural record to be developed also to establish this for future annual work plan and COC recommendations and our responses. So more work for you, Mark. Thank you.
Okay.
So I appreciate both those comments, but I'm just wondering, since really all we need to do is respond to their comments, to ask them to say, did we do the right thing? For me, that's pushing their responsibilities a little bit and possibly lightening our governance oversight. So I just throw that out there. I think responding to them and sharing that with them is great. And then they can take an issue up next year if we haven't addressed it quite like they want to. Anyway, just that's my suggestion. I'm a little cautious about saying, give us some sort of acknowledgement about this, that because I don't think it's that meant to be that back and forth in my mind.
That's Dennis. I'll retract my recommendation and I would defer to Megan interpretation regards to what our commitments are procedurally, and if whatever we have in place is already in writing, I don't want to complicate anything here, and so I'm just going to back off and let Megan, and you don't have to do it now, Megan, necessarily, but let's let Megan advise us on this, please.
Yeah, I actually think it's fairly straightforward, and the ordinance language itself just requires that report, but doesn't require anything on behalf of the board or MWPA beyond just recognizing that it doesn't have even the word recognized in there. It just requires that the report be prepared by the COC. So I think Dennis's interpretation is spot on with this.
Can I make one other footnote on that? Is I think many of these items will be incorporated into the finance policies. And so if we can just, I don't know if it's possible in this response, is that which policy it will be identified in, or is already included in, so that we do have that back reference, might be helpful.
So in the more verbose portion of my staff report, I did highlight what policies were adjusted to meet those goals.
Okay, great, perfect. So I think that's the historical record then.
Yeah. Julie, any further thought?
No, I appreciate, Dennis, your caution in asking them to confirm. And I think you're totally right that if we haven't met their recommendation, we'll hear about it in a subsequent year. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments at this point? So we'll go to the public now and see if there's any public comment on this item.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the COC recommendations item, please raise your hand in the reaction. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. And sir, we do not have any public comments.
Bringing it back to the committee then for any further discussion. No action is required. All right, thank you all. Good discussion. All right, we'll go to item 9 now, which is Board of Directors, the agenda review.
Yeah, and it should be a real simple discussion. I think it's a fairly simple agenda. And then with the previously mentioned recommendations that we combine the strategic plan with the presentation from Willow Labs in information items. So that'll remove one staff report and then move the COC staff report from staff reports to information items. Other than that, I think the agenda is strong as is.
All right, any questions, Julie?
I was just thinking maybe we should put the Bob Ravazio commendation first so that he doesn't have to sit around for the whole meeting.
I'll move that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, good idea, Julie. Other questions, comments? Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I recall that there's an item pertaining to bringing in some expertise, some GIS expertise to assist us in our analytical needs. And Mark, I'm assuming that you're going to give us, your advanced consideration for what approach to take. I mean, we're working with Sonoma Technology Institute, for example, and the EVAC study is working with other just the best of the best out there, and we're contracting a lot of that work. And so I haven't heard any discussion about I mean, is this are we looking at alternatives, if you will, in regard to contract versus hiring, and that basic question. I just had a question about what approach we're going to take, and if you could please just give me a few words on that.
Yeah, you bet. So we are working on an RFP. We're going down the contracting route right now rather than hiring a person, because we really are looking for a GIS analyst, not just a GIS specialist or a GIS technician. And it may be a lot for one person to handle. So the way we're creating the RFP, a single individual could be a respondent, or a GIS firm could be a respondent that may have the resources to provide the analysis and the technical work. So Anne is taking the lead on drafting that RFP, and that'll be included in consent for your review.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. It's critical. Good GIS analysis, and whoever a contractor is, that they have all of our layers and they're familiar with, all of our data and the attributes and all. So it's complicated, but it is critical. So I know we have some good contenders out there. Thanks. I was concerned that we were talking about hiring staff. That was my concern.
Okay, anything else from the committee members? We'll go to the public on this item, which is the agenda for our board meeting.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the draft board of directors agenda, please raise your hand in the reactions. If you're joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself. And so we do not have any questions for this item.
Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to the committee for any further discussion. No action is required. Okay, thank you all. Item 10 is informational items. Any of the committee members have informational items for the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item 11. Committee members request for future agenda items for the subcommittee and/or board agenda, I get to. Bruce?
Previous meeting, I'd suggested that we have one TAM come and talk about the work they're doing in Mark, the work that's being done on a regional priority plan, and potential funding from DOC to support that work. And I know it's been postponed, Mark. Is it on the calendar for a subsequent meeting?
Well, so we have received the forest health strategy presentation from Danny. So Danny knows that we would like him to be on board, and he's going to contact me when he feels like he has a product ready to go.
Oh, okay. So do you think that Adam has been covered then?
Well, we have the forest health strategy item has been covered. What hasn't been covered is where we're going with the regional priority plan. RPP. But when he's going to let me know when he feels that product is where we can present it. Okay,
because I understood that he had a January delivery date. So it'll be, yeah, I'm really interested in the RPP, what it says and the implications for MWPA.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other items for future agendas? All right, so we're going to go to item 12, which is actually a closed session. As indicated on the agenda, the executive committee has 2 closed session items today, both of which are being convened pursuant to Government Code Section 5497.6, a conference with the executive officer related to the negotiation with the planning and program manager, and a conference with MWPA negotiator Gene Bonender related to the negotiations with the executive officer. So those are the 2 items, and I'd like to open it for public expression on these closed session items.
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the closed session items, please raise your hand in the reactions. Those joining us by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. I'm sorry, we do not have any comment for the closed session.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the public. We'll adjourn into closed session and we'll return to open session for an announcement out of closed session if it's appropriate. We will return, but whether we have an announcement will be determined. Thank you. All right, we'll see you in closed session.
So Dennis, do we just remain here on this link? Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
Megan sent us an email.
Okay, I'll find it.
I think the agenda has one on it too. Is that correct, Martina?
Only your version, Dennis.
Only my, okay.
There was an email that I sent out about 15 minutes prior to the start of this meeting, Bruce, that has the closed session.
Thanks, Martina. I'll find it. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you shortly.
Hi, Martina. We're coming back.
Welcome back to the party, sir. I'm glad did you all have, was it easy to get to closed session? Nobody had any issues?
No, only you should probably note that Catherine Hilliard did show up for closed session.
Perfect.
Minutes. Not sure she's going to return here.
Okay, no problem. We'll make sure to note that in the minutes, and let me stop sharing the screen so that we are all back in the same spot.
Rachel and Julie are in the audience.
All right, thank you.
And they should be joining us in just a second. Julie. And there's Rachel. Welcome back, everybody.
So welcome back, everyone. The executive committee met in closed session as noted on the agenda. No reportable action was taken in closed session. So we look forward to seeing you on January 19th at the board meeting. And this meeting is adjourned. Happy New Year to everyone and stay safe.
Thank you.
Right.
Take care, everybody.
Back, Dennis.
Bye-bye.